It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place. It's a memorial to a lost time. I think that what we're looking at in that whole area is the outcome of contact with an earlier, largely lost civilization.
Beneath Russia's frozen earth lies a prehistoric labyrinth that should not exist. The tunnels are impossibly precise, carved long before any known civilization.
Within the Kabardino-Balkaria Republic of the Russian Federation lies a place of towering mountains and wild, untamed wilderness.
Every scan reveals structures far older than history itself, with no explanation of who built them or why. The deeper scientists go, the more disturbing the discoveries become. The reason behind it all is truly terrifying. The Forbidden Mountains of Mystery. Locals in Kabardino-Balkaria whisper that something is deeply wrong with Karahora Mountain. They say parts of the land are cursed, birds refuse to sing, animals bolt in panic, and livestock brought too close go wild. Compasses spin wildly instead of pointing north. Even GPS systems fail. No one can explain why. This remote peak in Russia's North Caucasus has carried a reputation of fear for generations, and the stories surrounding it have only grown darker with time. According to oral traditions, there are ancient stone doors hidden in the mountains. These doors are believed to lead into deep underground tunnels. Some of these tunnels are said to stretch for miles beneath the earth. The stories describe entire underground cities, long forgotten and sealed shut by unknown forces. Some people believe these places were not made by humans at all. To some, these discoveries suggest that Karahora is not just a mountain, but the remains of something far larger, possibly an ancient megastructure hidden beneath the rock. There are also warnings about travelers who entered these areas and were never seen again. These disappearances are unexplained, and no evidence is ever found. Others say they have heard strange noises coming from under the ground. These sounds are described as low-pitched and mechanical. They occur in patterns and repeat over time, almost like the sound of a machine operating underground. Whether these noises have ever been reliably recorded remains unconfirmed, but the stories persist. During the Soviet era, research teams were sent to the area to investigate some of these claims. These teams were made up of trained geologists and scientists who were interested in the unusual terrain and possible mineral deposits. They discovered a number of strange physical features. One of the most puzzling findings was a series of large, symmetrical depressions in the land. These depressions appeared to be too regular in shape to be natural. They also recorded strong magnetic disturbances, similar to those reported by locals. These findings were carefully documented, but after a short period of research, the teams were pulled out of the area. No official explanation was ever given. Planned infrastructure projects, such as military roads leading to the mountain, were quietly canceled without explanation. Today, getting close to Karahora Mountain is still very difficult. The terrain is hard to navigate, the paths are not maintained, and government restrictions make travel even harder. Some people believe this is intentional and that someone wants to keep people away from the area. But in 2011, one man would defy the legends and descend into something no human was ever meant to find. The man who followed the legends. Among the many stories surrounding Karahora Mountain, one of the most persistent is the account of a man named Arur Yemukov. According to several speculative sources and local retellings, Yemukov was not a typical adventurer. He is described as a trained speleologist, a scientist who studies caves, who also happened to be of Balkar descent. The Caucasus was his homeland, and he reportedly devoted his life to both its unique geography and its folklore. Unlike outsiders who dismissed the old Balkar and Karachay legends as simple myths, Yemukov is said to have taken them seriously. He believed that behind the tales of stone doors, hidden chambers, and underground cities lay kernels of truth that modern science had overlooked. These claims hold that Yemukov became particularly fascinated by myths of strange tunnels and sealed passageways beneath Karahora. His curiosity grew when he allegedly encountered declassified Soviet military maps. These maps, according to the story, marked parts of the mountain as restricted or dangerous, yet gave no explanation why. Intrigued, Yemukov began comparing these maps with modern satellite imagery. In doing so, he reportedly identified patterns that did not appear natural. Some images seemed to show long, parallel lines along the mountainside, almost like buried corridors. Others revealed faint geometric forms, rectangles, and even near-perfect circles that appeared etched into the terrain. Still others suggested depressions so regular in shape they looked more like collapsed chambers than natural erosion. Taken together, these anomalies, along with the oral traditions of his people, led Jemukov to a radical suspicion that Karahora Mountain might not be entirely natural at all. Some who have repeated his story claim he privately wondered whether the mountain concealed a vast artificial structure, what today would be described as a prehistoric megastructure. According to locals, Jemukov allegedly organized a small expedition in 2011 to follow up on these suspicions. Using both modern surveying tools and traditional guidance from local legends, he and his team attempted to reach the areas where the anomalies appeared strongest. After days of difficult climbing and careful observation, the group reportedly found something that should not have been there. Near the upper slopes of Karahora, they came upon a narrow fissure in the rock. No records had ever indicated caves or sinkholes in that area, making the opening all the more puzzling. At first glance, the fissure looked like a natural crack, but when examined more closely, the team concluded it was not random at all. The walls appeared too clean, the shape too precise. What they had found, according to these accounts, was a vertical shaft dropping straight down into the mountain, plunging more than 130 feet. Descent into the impossible. After securing their gear and setting up a controlled descent system, the team began rappelling into the vertical shaft. As they went down, they noticed that the walls were unnaturally smooth, and the shaft kept the same uniform shape the entire way, showing no signs of being formed by natural forces. When they finally reached the bottom of the shaft, they entered a large underground chamber. What they found there was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It did not look like a natural cave, and it did not resemble any known ancient structure. The space was enormous, with a ceiling that stood more than 60 feet high. However, what stood out most was the shape of the chamber. Everything was geometric and controlled. The walls formed perfect right angles. The floor and ceiling were completely flat. The space was made up of massive stone blocks, some of which were estimated to weigh as much as 200 tons each. The stones were placed together so precisely that the gaps between them were almost impossible to detect. Even a thin metal blade or a piece of paper could not fit into the joints between the blocks. There was no mortar holding them together, and yet they remained solidly in place. What made the discovery even more unusual was the complete absence of any signs of human presence. There were no chisel marks on the stones, no tool scratches, no broken fragments lying around. There was no evidence that the blocks had been cut, shaped, or moved by any known manual methods. There was also no nearby quarry or source of the stone, making it unclear how these blocks could have even been transported, let alone placed so precisely deep inside a mountain. The team also found nothing that suggested cultural activity. There was no soot from torches or lamps, which would normally be expected in a place this dark. They saw no evidence of rituals, no offerings, no skeletal remains, and no artwork or carvings. Likewise, there were no symbols, paintings, or even graffiti on the walls. This was highly unusual because most ancient chambers built by humans contain at least some kind of cultural or religious markings. Even tombs and ceremonial rooms in forgotten ruins usually contain at least a few items left behind. But this space contained absolutely nothing. The complete absence of any identifiable trace seemed deliberate, as if someone had gone to great lengths to make sure the origin of the structure would never be known. For the team, this raised disturbing questions. Who could have built something like this, and why would they erase every sign of their presence? That question became even more unsettling when they recalled that Karahora Mountain and the Caucasus as a whole had once drawn intense interest from the Nazis, a regime willing to spill endless blood in their attempt to seize control of whatever secrets these mountains might be hiding. The Nazi obsession with the Caucasus. During World War II, the Caucasus Mountains became an important target for both strategic and symbolic reasons. This remote and rugged region briefly drew global attention in 1942 during a military campaign known as Operation Edelweiss. As part of this operation, Nazi Germany sent a large force into the Caucasus to try to seize control of the oil fields in the region. These oil fields were seen as a critical resource that could fuel the German war machine. However, historical records and personal testimonies suggest that the Nazis may have had another goal that went beyond natural resources. Alongside the military units, there were also members of a lesser-known group traveling with the Germans. These were researchers and agents from the Ahnenerbe, a secret organization founded by Heinrich Himmler. The Ahnenerbe was officially described as a scientific and historical research institute, but in reality, it was focused on unorthodox topics. Their work centered on the study of ancient civilizations, racial myths, and esoteric theories. Some of their projects involved searching for evidence of long-lost cultures, such as Atlantis, and they were particularly interested in legends about underground worlds like Shambhala and Agartha. These inner worlds were believed by some to be real places, possibly hidden deep beneath the Earth's surface. The Ahnenerbe believed that such places might hold powerful secrets or forgotten technologies. They thought these hidden realms could be connected to what they called the Atlantean bloodline, an idea suggesting that a highly advanced race once existed and may have left behind traces of their knowledge. Unconfirmed reports suggest that Nazi scouts made it as far as the lower areas around Karahora Mountain. It is believed that they conducted a limited survey of the region and took notes and measurements. In 1978, decades after the war, a local hiker exploring a remote section of the mountain found something unusual. He discovered a weathered stone with a strange carving on its surface. Though the symbol was faded and partially eroded, its shape was still recognizable. It was a swastika-like glyph, not identical to the Nazi symbol, but clearly linked in design. The carving appeared to have been deliberately placed and was not part of the natural rock. It raised questions about who had been there and what they had been searching for. Despite their interest in ancient sites and mystical theories, the Nazis did not stay long at Karahora. After initial exploration, they left the region. There was no follow-up expedition. No major excavation was attempted. They had come all that way, brought specialized personnel, and shown clear interest in the myths connected to the mountain, yet they chose to walk away. This has left historians and scientists puzzled. The Nazis had spent years and large amounts of money chasing after myths and clues all across Europe, Asia, and even North Africa. Nothing was considered too remote or unlikely if it hinted at a forgotten source of power. So why then would they abandon Karahora, a site that appeared to match so many of their obsessions? Why walk away from a mountain long rumored to contain underground chambers, magnetic anomalies, and signs of unnatural construction? There are only a few possible explanations. One is that they found something that disturbed them deeply, something that threatened their carefully constructed ideology. Another possibility is that they encountered a phenomenon they could not explain or control, a force that even their scientists and engineers had no answer for. Some researchers speculate that they feared what might lie beneath Karahora. They believed it was not a discovery to be harnessed, but a warning to be avoided. Others suggest they were not given a choice. Perhaps a natural disaster, like a sudden collapse or earthquake, drove them out. Whatever the reason, the Nazis did not return to Karahora. They left behind no official records of what they had found. No documents have been released detailing what was seen or measured during their time there. The only known trace is the mysterious carved stone discovered decades later. That silence, the lack of follow-up, the absence of documentation, and the decision to walk away raises serious questions. Either the site was far more dangerous than they expected, or something made sure they never came back. Decades later, the same sense of mystery and unease would surface again, not in a military campaign, but in the life of the one man who dared to explore the mountain in modern times. Tragedy, death, and the photographs that shook the internet. In 2015, Arur Jamukov, the speleologist who had reportedly led the descent into the shaft at Karahora Mountain in 2011, died unexpectedly. The circumstances of his death were never fully explained. No official cause was released to the public, and no autopsy report was made available to researchers or family members. Those who knew him said he had not been suffering from any known illness, and he had shown no serious health problems before his sudden passing. Yemukov's alleged expedition is said to have confirmed that the shaft was not a natural formation. According to some accounts, the walls appeared unnaturally smooth and geometrically precise. Other unverified reports claim that his team withdrew after their instruments began malfunctioning deep inside, but no official documentation of this exists. What is certain is that Jemukov planned a second descent with better equipment. That expedition never took place. His sudden death ended the work before he could publish any conclusions. Just 2 years later, in 2017, another researcher named Vadim Chernobrov also died. Unlike Jemukov, Chernobrov was a well-known ufologist and anomalist who had a long history of studying strange sites across Russia. He had expressed interest in continuing Yemukov's work and was actively collecting testimonies and data about Karahora. His death, like Yemukov's, came suddenly and without clear medical explanation. No autopsy results were made public. With both men gone, two of the most persistent investigators into the Karahora mystery had vanished within a short span of time. After these events, unsettling stories began to circulate among others who had visited the mountain. Some individuals reported vivid hallucinations and recurring nightmares. A few described violent nausea, sometimes accompanied by vomiting a dark substance that doctors could not identify. Others developed paranoia that lingered for months after leaving the site. These accounts, however, remain anecdotal and have not been verified in any medical study. One particularly disturbing story claimed that a man who had recently visited the mountain later disappeared from his home. His torn tent was reportedly found in his backyard, but he himself was never located. Then came the photographs. In 2018, a man identified as Alexander Splashnoff, described in online accounts as a reclusive photographer with a passion for remote landscapes, released a series of images on the internet that he claimed were taken inside the Karahora shaft. Whether Splashnoff himself was a real person or a name created to hide someone else's identity remains uncertain. No official record of him exists outside these reports, yet the photographs attributed to his name spread quickly across forums and social media. The images showed smooth, polished stone walls, perfect geometric corners, and strange light reflections that did not match the known conditions of the cave. According to the account associated with Splashnoff, some of the reflections were not visible at the time of shooting. They only appeared later in the images, and no explanation was given for how or why. The photos spread quickly across social media and alternative history forums, sparking heated debate. To many, the images looked too precise and artificial to be natural. Viewers argued over whether they were proof of an ancient megastructure, a hoax, or something in between. But within days, the images began vanishing. Copies disappeared from servers, archives went missing, and entire discussions were deleted, even from forums that rarely censored content. The mystery deepened when claims surfaced that Splashnoff himself had burned his negatives and destroyed his camera equipment. Friends described him as fearful and unwilling to speak publicly again. Scientists who were contacted about the images declined to investigate, not because the evidence lacked value, but because the deeper they looked, the more they felt that something about Karahora was not meant to be uncovered. Man or nature, either answer terrifies scientists. If the reported structure beneath Karahora Mountain were truly created by human hands, it would force us to completely rewrite the history of civilization. When one considers that the stone blocks are said to weigh up to 200 tons each, over 4 times heavier than the largest stones in the Egyptian pyramids, it shows that whoever built it was not just advanced, but operating on an industrial scale far beyond anything credited to the ancient world. Even with today's machinery, moving and fitting such blocks deep underground would be a monumental challenge. Yet nothing around Karahora explains its existence. There are no cultural layers, no signs of progression, no gradual steps leading to such advanced construction. It simply appears in the ground as if it was always there. Some theorists argue it may predate Sumer, which is widely considered the first true civilization, rising in Mesopotamia over 6,000 years ago. If that claim is true, then the structure would not just be old, it would belong to a time before writing, before cities, before recorded history itself. Unlike known sites built for rulers or rituals, this place does not appear to celebrate life at all. Its layout is not built for comfort or ceremony. The narrow passages, sealed chambers, and strange geometry feel more like a machine than a monument. Whatever purpose it served, scientists argue, it was not made for the people living above it. On the other hand, if the Karahora formation is not man-made, the implications may be even more unsettling. Nature does not typically create machine-like structures. It does not form rooms with sharp corners and flat planes, or interlocking blocks that show no cracks or random breakage. If the reported features are natural, it would mean that geological processes can mimic design and construction at an unprecedented scale. That would require rethinking what the Earth itself is capable of producing. Could the planet be shaping patterns that only appear engineered to us? Could unknown natural forces be generating spaces that look deliberate or even functional? Scientists who have spoken about the mystery admit that either possibility is deeply disturbing. In both cases, the unanswered questions are what terrify researchers most. Some believe the absence of follow-up by governments, by institutions, and even by academics who normally thrive on discovery is not accidental. It may be intentional. Pursuing the truth of Karahora could mean revealing knowledge that destabilizes established history and science. If the structure is human-made, it would imply that history books have erased an entire advanced culture, perhaps deliberately. There are darker theories still. Some scientists whisper that the site may not just contain a structure, but serve a function, one we do not yet understand. Was it built to hold something in or to keep something out? Is it dormant, or could it still be active in ways we cannot yet measure? These are not the kinds of questions most researchers are willing to gamble their careers or their lives on. The silence, then, may not be about ignorance. It may be about fear. Because whether Karahora is the work of man or nature, the truth hidden beneath its stone could unravel far more than we are prepared to face. The deeper question now is not just who built the shaft under Karahora, or why, but whether the mountain itself is the last barrier between us and something far more dangerous than we can imagine. Some doors are sealed for a reason. What do you think about this discovery? Comment down below.